Okay, so before we get started in on rational numbers and adding and subtracting, I want to review with you really quick the rules for when we add and subtract integers. Whoops, let's do a minus 17. Okay, so here I've got, when we worked with adding and subtracting integers, we always looked at the symbols first. Those are different. So we found the difference. So in our head, we would think 17 minus 10, which would give us 7. And then we're going to apply the larger numbers sign. So 17 is considered larger when you just compare the digits. It had a negative sign. So our answer would be negative 7. Okay, if we had numbers that had the same symbol, so let's say this time I did negative 10 and a negative 17. Okay, I look at the symbols, they're the same, so I find the sum. So the sum is to add, so 10 plus 17 is 27. And then I'm going to apply the same symbol. So I'm going to add a negative sign in front because we apply the same symbol. So we get negative 27. We're going to use those concepts today, only today we're going to work with fractions and decimals. Okay, so the key thing to remember when working with decimals is you must line up at the decimal point. It's also very good practice to take the bigger digit and always have that as your top number. Whether it's a positive or a negative, it doesn't matter. Whether you're adding or subtracting, it's just good practice to have the bigger digit without the symbols as your top number. So here, when I look at these, before I decide if I'm going to add or subtract, I'm just going to compare these numbers, not paying attention to the symbol in front. So when I look at them, I would say 7.62 is the bigger number. So I'm going to write that as my top number. And then I've got 4.05. Notice how I am lining up at the decimal place. Okay, so this is where my decimal is going to be. Okay, so now I need to decide, am I going to add or subtract? So that's where we go ahead and we look at our symbols that are in the front. Are they the same or different? Those are different. So we're going to find the difference, which means we're going to subtract. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract this out. So I can't do 2 minus 5, so I'll borrow. 12 minus 5 gives me 7. 5 minus 0 is a 5. 7 minus 4 is 3. So we get 3.57. Now I have to decide if it's positive or negative. So since I already declared that this was the bigger number without looking at the symbols, I'm going to look at the symbol in front of that, and it was a positive symbol. So our answer ends up being a positive 3.57. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, so bigger digit. We're just looking at the digits, not paying attention to the symbols in front. I'm saying the 2.75, so I'm going to go ahead and write that as my top number. And then 0.65 is going to be underneath. Now I'm going to decide if I'm going to add or subtract. So I'm going to look at the symbols in front. No symbol means it's a positive. So this is a positive versus a negative. Okay, this is really canceled out. It's not telling me whether I'm adding or subtracting. So I have a positive and I have a negative. Those are different. I'm going to find the difference. So I'm going to subtract. So I get 2.10. Now I have to decide if it's positive or negative. So I already said this is the bigger number. It had a negative sign, so my answer is negative 2.1. Okay, we take that extra 0 off. It's called an extraneous 0, which means we don't need it at the end. If we were working money, yes, you would leave the 0, but anything beyond that, you're not going to leave the 0. Okay, so when I just compare these, which is bigger, 8.15 or 4.3, well, 8.15 is, so I'm going to put that as my top number, just in case I have to subtract. Line up my decimals. I see I've got one spot there with nothing. I'm going to put a 0 in there. Now I'm going to look at my symbols. Those are the same, so I'm going to find the sum. We're going to add these together this time. So I get 12.45. Same symbol, find the sum, apply the same symbol. They were both negatives. My final answer should be negative 12.45. Okay, so I'm going to pull one out here for you guys to try on your own. So you've got negative 12.5 and a positive 15.3. So go ahead and pause your video and work your way through this problem and then check back in a minute to see if you got your answer correct. You should have gotten a positive 2.8 on this one. Okay, so that's working with decimals. So the key